Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm host Levi Stevenson, managing editor over at Wide Right Natty Light. And since we last talked last Tuesday, things have changed, to say the least. As of last Tuesday, we were talking about the end of the season, talking about the win at Oklahoma State, talking about potentially a bowl berth. We're talking about transfer portal priorities and all this, and life's all fine and dandy. And then Thursday and Friday happened. And before you knew it, Matt Campbell is off to Penn State to be the head coach over there. And not 15 minutes later, Jimmy Rogers is introduced as the new head coach of Iowa State football. I would have done a show on here on Friday or Saturday or something like that, but I ended up doing a stream for Wide Right on Friday night, and it did pretty good numbers. I think at one point I saw the live stream for our Wide Right live stream with me, Matthias, and Dylan, and Austin. I think topped out at like 16,000 concurrent viewers on Twitter, which is pretty good number for us. Anyways. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I don't really want to dive too much into the Matt Campbell stuff, just because I think we're all kind of moved on by now. Like, maybe some people aren't. And it still is kind of like a processing what's all going. A situation where I think a lot of people are still trying to just processing what all happened, and they're just kind of trying to get used to the idea that Matt Campbell's not our head coach anymore, and it just is what it is. He's over there in Happy Valley and going to coach Penn State. So, I mean, it kind of is what it is there. And frankly, Friday was one of the craziest days of my Cyclone fandom, at least modern era. I mean, just tons of information going each way. And it was just kind of an unreal day, because there was it seemed like there was rumors popping up every half hour was this new rumor. It's like, oh, this person's in, this brand new donor's in. We're obviously I would say found a mega donor. Yeah. The hold the line thing. Honestly, even if it ended up being in hindsight, it ended up being just a giant nothing. We were not holding anything. Matt Campbell had made up his mind on Thursday. It ended up being nothing, but I will profess to having an absolutely glorious time holding the line with all my fellow Cyclone fans, even if the line we were holding was absolutely nothing. That was the Harry Stein stuff was by far the most interesting part of all this. For anybody that doesn't know, Harry Stein is by far the richest person in Iowa, owns Stein Seed, which a lot of people haven't heard of because they just kind of do their own. They are I think the world's largest producer of genetically modified soybeans. And they're a massive seed company that almost nobody knows about, because they don't I don't really think they do much as far as public advertising. They're not Pioneer or Latham or whatever, or Kent or any of these other brands, Monsanto, or what used to be Monsanto, Bayer, any of those. You don't really see, you don't see Stein advertise seed as much as the other one. But anyways, Harry Stein is the richest person in Iowa. He's roughly worth about $10 billion. He's an Iowa State grad. Up to this point has been a fairly quiet donor, and he has mostly donated to the university and not to athletics. Well, naturally, when it came up on Friday, naturally Iowa State fans have been trying to wonder if we can ever get Harry Stein to jump in and really go in and be our mega donor and be our Cody Campbell, basically. He has the money to do it, but out of nowhere on Friday, someone decided to write some fan fiction that Harry Stein was suddenly getting involved. I think everybody heard. I think everybody heard something a little bit different, but the gist of what I had heard was that Harry Stein was getting ready to fund most or all of Iowa State's revenue sharing obligation, which would then, allow them to go pretty significantly far over the cap in their NIL and revenue sharing spending, um, which Harry Stein could probably afford to do. That would be a massive commitment to make just kind of on a whim. And turns out it was completely fan fiction. That was kind of a funny little saga because I mean, apparently we weren't the only ones that heard about it because, there were people on Twitter saying like buy more seed and all this. It was wild, man. That whole situation was fucking crazy. Um, but in the end, Matt obviously left. But the like I said, I don't want to dive too far into it because I was mad about it over the weekend, and I'm past it now, and and now that I've had a chance to kind of reflect on it, I think you know knowing what like I do know, which is not like a lot more than anybody else really. Um, I've come around to the idea that Jamie probably did the best he could with the given situation, maybe. Um, uh, you know, argue what you want about announcing the coach while Matt Campbell's meeting with the players. From what I understand, is that has gone over quite poorly. That went over quite poorly with the team. Hopefully, hopefully the players understand that that was not Jimmy's fault. That was just either Jamie or the athletic department or whatever. Someone made a mistake there and said they should have waited till after the meeting or waited till Saturday morning or something like that. Whatever it is. Either way, yeah, I don't want to get too far into like could Iowa State have kept Matt Campbell because I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I mean I don't know enough detail about anything. I don't know the behind the scenes stuff required to even dig into that. But you know, as far as the Jimmy Rogers stuff goes, from everything that I heard from Jimmy Pollard, from what I heard from Jimmy on during his press conference yesterday, he seems to be a really good fit. He's a Midwest. He was originally from Arizona, Chandler, Arizona, but played his ball up at South Dakota State. He was a walk on up there. Actually played against Iowa State in like 2008 or 2009. I saw a clip earlier today. So he actually made a tackle on Alexander Robinson. Funny enough. Um, then he was an assistant at South Dakota State for a while. Then was their head coach when they won national title as an assistant and as a head coach, and then went to Washington State for a year. I think he said himself he wasn't intending there to be only a year, but he and Jamie had a previous relationship, and where Jimmy had expressed interest in the job, not really dissimilar from the Matt Campbell story. Where the famous Matt Campbell story was when he was here, when he was at Toledo, came to Iowa State, and then he was like, "Oh man, this place is incredible. I want to coach here someday," whatever. And obviously, you know, the rest is history. It's a similar-ish story in that Jimmy met Jamie and said like, "Hey, how do I get the Iowa State gigs?" And at least as Jamie tells it, Jimmy asked like, "How do you get the how can I get the Iowa State gig someday or whatever?" And however that else went from there. But eventually it opened up. Jamie called him and said, "Would you accept the job if I offered it to you?" And here we are. But I tell you what though, like listening to his press conference yesterday, the guy's relatable. He's honest. I think it seems to me as though he's got the right mentality for this. It's kind of funny. He made a comment about his RBF, his resting bitch face. At the beginning of things, like, I just look like this. I'm not always angry, which I can relate to as someone that is also afflicted with a at least a minimum a mild case of RBF. So I appreciate that. Little bit of candor. I also another thing I appreciated that he really didn't have to. I don't think I don't think it was I don't know if it was a calculated move or was just kind of like he's good at this and he knows what he's doing, but he was very careful to he made a point to over and over bring up Matt Campbell and his legacy and how and being excited about building on what Matt Campbell built here. I mean, he knows that like that Cyclone fans are, were slash are, you know, upset about it, hurt by it a little bit, or just, the wound is still fresh, it's still tender. And he didn't want to come in here, I mean, it would have been a bad move to do it, but like he obviously he came in a point, of trying to not sound as though like, oh, he's gone. We don't forget. We're gonna forget. Fuck that guy, type of thing, or whatever. Like he didn't take that road. He took the road on. He took the road of, I really appreciate everything Matt Campbell did here. I'm excited to build on what he accomplished in Ames, and I try to learn as much as I can from him from a distance, type of thing. So it was paying homage to, the former coach, and, trying to say like, hey, I get it that, losing a beloved coach is hard, and I'm not here to replace him necessarily. I'm not, or well, I'm not here to try to like make you forget about him, type of thing, but like it's more just like I'm here to continue to build on what was happening. Not telling you to just forget about that part or to tarnish Campbell in any way. Just, he's going to be his own thing. And unfortunately, because he is following Matt Campbell, he's going to be compared to Matt Campbell. That's just how this works. He's going to get compared to Matt Campbell. But I do hope people give him a chance, which is funny because Mysterious Stranger says, I'm probably done with season tickets for Iowa State football at this point, but I hope he has success. I respect your decision, Mysterious Stranger. What I would tell you, I mean, if it's a financial thing for you, like you just like money, like it just financially isn't worth it for you. Like, I get it, do what you got to do. But if it's truly just like I'm not as excited for Jimmy Rogers as I was for Matt Campbell, type of thing, I give Jimmy a season. Like give Jimmy Rogers a season or two, and then if you want, if it's bad, drop off, do what you got to do, or whatever. But if it's truly just because of the coaching change that you want to get rid of your season tickets, I would implore you to give him a chance, because I really do think that Jimmy seems like, it's hard to know for sure, but he seems like one of the best hires Iowa State could have made. Maybe the best, at least one of the best hires they could have made. I think his mindset is not much different from Matt Campbell. He's a defensive guy, which we'll talk about at in a second here. A thing that he brought up as far as scheme goes, that he wants to go to a 4-down front, which is very interesting. But he's a hard nosed guy. He wants to run the football. He wants to do, he wants to play football a lot of the same way that Matt Campbell played football. So like from a mentality and just an overall how the program feels and looks, I would bet it's not a drastic shift in philosophy. Like, we're not suddenly going to be an up tempo air raid team or something. Like it's not going to be that way. And one of the ways is that they hired an offensive coordinator today that I think is a home run hire as well. Jackson Johnson wants to know, is it true that Rodgers took the job as a solid for Campbell on account of whether he can fix the QB situation? Is it true that Rodgers took the job as a solid, like Jamie Rodgers did it as a favor for Campbell? I guess I haven't heard that. I mean, I guess it's not impossible, I guess, but I haven't heard that. It's possible that Matt Campbell, had something to say about the next coach or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't know if he was given input, if he gave input. He was asked to give input. I don't know. I would kind of doubt it. Usually that's not something that's common. But I guess it's not impossible. I don't know the answer to that for sure. I think we're gonna be okay if we can keep some guys and bring contributors in. Yeah, Grant Weaver says real excited about the Rodgers hire. Seems like a great hire, but it's always roll the dice. Absolutely. Good teams last year against top teams. Defense will be good. Yeah, in general. Yeah, so TJ Otzelberger was at South Dakota State at the same time as Jimmy Rodgers, and from what it sounds like, TJ vouched for him basically, and told Jamie's like, yeah, if you can get him, go get him, type of thing. So if TJ Otzelberger is a fan of Jimmy Rodgers, I'm a fan of Jimmy Rodgers. But I think that will help though, is that with the similar mindset in the similar mentality of the program, just aesthetically, I think things will look fairly similar. And actually, I mean, we can kind of morph into that a little bit. Um, Before we do that, though, I do want to say one quick thing about the bowl game situation for Iowa State because this is kind of the last. This is the last like piece of this is one of the last pieces of last season that we're gonna like that's like the last remaining scrap of the 2025 season that we're gonna see is the bowl game situation. Um for anybody that hadn't heard, obviously Iowa State has elected to decline any invitation to a bowl game. Um which is funny. We've had a bunch of those this season. Baylor also did it because Baylor was in line to be a 5-7 bowl team. They declined their invitation. Notre Dame declined an invitation. And I think there was one other team that did as well. Um, Iowa State did it via a players' vote. The players voted to not play a bowl game. The publicly given reason was that it was due to injuries and just frankly just not being able to field a football team. Oh, Kansas State was the other one, yeah. To frankly just not being able to like safely field a football team. Um, I have no doubt. I mean, it's very clear, just like Kansas State, just like some of these, just like Kansas State, that is a coaching change situation where it's like, who coaches this thing? You know, what's all happening here? Um, okay, you did as well as a backup. Okay. Uh, but I have no doubt that like even if the outside public doesn't want to believe that like the injuries thing matter, like, oh, you've got all these players in the roster. What do you mean you can't field a football team? Iowa State was banged up beyond all belief. You have players that want to that are thinking about transferring out, and if they're thinking about transferring out of the program, they're obviously not going to play in a bowl game. Like if they have their meetings with Jimmy this week, and I don't know, just pick a name. Jontez Williams, he's tore his ACL. Let's say Ben Bramer. Let's say Ben Bramer. Let's say he has his meeting with Jimmy, this week or last week or whatever it was, or this week, next week, whatever it is. And he's like, "Now I'm just going to transfer. I'm going to go to Penn State or whatever." Why would Ben Bramer play in a bowl game for Iowa State? And there's lots of other guys that maybe are a little on the fence or whatever it is, just because that's just how college football works now. I think I get it. There between the injuries, the coaching change, and the like a whole bunch of players not knowing for sure if they're going to stay. I mean, who are you going to put on that football field? Like a bunch of walk-ons that couldn't practice against anybody, so they can go out and just get demolished by some Big Ten. They can go out and get demolished by Minnesota in the Rate Bowl, because I think that was who the opponent was scheduled to be, was Minnesota. So they can go out and get demolished by a bad Minnesota team in the Rate Bowl because we're playing walk-ons. I'm good. So I don't blame them, even if everyone's like, getting rid of bowl games is like whatever. Jason makes a good point. If he was doing it as a favor, wouldn't you think Matt would tell the team when they're meeting with them? That is what would lead me to believe that Matt had no input whatsoever in the Jimmy Rogers thing. Because if that were the case, if like this was done some sort of as a favor to Matt, or Matt had some sort of input on this, then like I almost think he would have said, "I'm heading out the door, but Jamie's got a great coach coming in behind that I helped choose." Like I think there would have been some sort of connection there, where I don't know if Matt would introduce anybody, but like there would have been some sort of connection made there in that handoff, basically. So I'm inclined to believe there's probably no connection between like Campbell and them wanting to go after Jimmy Rogers. So the Mauser thing, I told I wasn't going to talk too much about this, but here we are. The Mauser thing, it said Mauser would have been the Campbell hire, right? I mean, I guess, I mean, if Jamie was going to ask Campbell for advice or his opinion on the new coach, I would guess he would say Mouse, but he also could just like not say Mouse, so that way obviously doesn't hire him and he gets to keep Mouse as an offensive coordinator. I'm not sure exactly how that seems dicey. It seems complicated enough that Jamie just would not ask Matt, because like how could Jamie know that Matt was like giving him his actual best advice? It's kind of a weird conflict of interest situation. Um, Freddie says, so officially two assistants on staff now. So let's go to the next thing. I was going to bring that up next. So we did get word today that Tyler Roll has been, Roll has been, um, per the Detroit, the newspaper in Detroit, has been confirmed, whatever you want to call it, hired as the offensive coordinator, which I think in my opinion is a home run all day. I think that's, I mean, short of keeping Mouse, I guess maybe that's one of the best names you could have gotten as an offensive coordinator. He's familiar with the program. Obviously, he was just here a couple years ago as the running game coordinator, running backs coach, and all that. Uh, familiar with the program, knows the guys on offense already. Could theoretically help keep some guys around since they're familiar with Tyler Roll. I think this is a home run hire. This also means that, obviously it's going to be some version of a power run, power spread type football team, much as they were. I don't know if Tyler Roll is as creative and aggressive of a play caller as Mouse was, but I think this gives you like just about the best shot to having some sort of scheme continuity involved here, especially with the running game specifically. A couple comments here about Hansen in this. With Tyler Roll as the offensive coordinator / I would assume also running backs coach or some sort of run game coordinator, whatever it is. Hopefully you can get Hansen and Sama to stay, because I believe those two would be in line for a big season in 2026. If you can get both of them to stay, you can get your offensive line put together, and you can get and Tyler Roll is there coordinating the running game like he did at North Dakota State. I would think that would be a great place to start. If you can have a strong running game next season on Tyler Roll's offense, and then who knows what the quarterback thing is. Up to this point, Rocco has professed his profound love and loyalty for Iowa State, but that was when Matt Campbell was coach. Will Matt Campbell try to bring him to Penn State? Will Matt Campbell go after Sam Leavitt now that he's in the portal? And sort of like, which that'd be quite the like betrayal of Rocco's if Matt Campbell went and took Sam Leavitt in the portal instead of Rocco. But it's not impossible that Rocco stays. So he's only got 1 year left. He's familiar. He'll be familiar with the offensive coordinator. He may just want to finish his career out. If you can keep Rocco, fantastic. Then the offensive side of the ball looks much less like fluid. If you've got Rocco, Hansen, and Sama, you're feeling pretty decent about the offense. Hopefully you can keep some receivers. If you have to go get them in the portal, it is what it is. Hopefully Chase Soul sticks around, Brett Eskelson, these guys. Like if who knows with tight end, if Bramer and Burkle go to Penn State, you still got Cooper Alexander behind them. Fortunately the cupboard is fairly full at a lot of these skill positions. Even if you can't keep Rocco, let's say Rocco goes to Penn State, which would be depressing, but if let's say he goes to Penn State, you've still got, in assuming you can keep Alex Mansky because he's an in-state kid, Moberly or Mansky, especially Mansky's being that he's quite a bit younger. If you can keep Mansky and you can just let him be a game manager with Hansen and Sama, really, with Hansen and Sama, piloting a really strong running game, I think that's a great foundation to build on. Is it like going to be the most explosive, high flying offense ever? Probably not. Unironically hire Brian Ferentz to the O-line. Honestly, it'd be pretty funny. Yeah, Kyle Conrarty is one that they need to make sure they keep Kyle Conrarty. Now, I mean, Lucas Tenbrock, the incoming punter, also did kick in high school. So I guess if like the sky fell and Kyle Conradi transferred to fucking Iowa or something. Like theoretically, Lucas Sembrock could be your kicker and punter, but you'd obviously prefer him to be just one or the other. Um, but if you can keep Hansen and Sama, that gives you a significant running game to build around. River Peppers, especially. I This is truly just I thought I saw it someplace that if Matt Campbell were going to take any of the running backs to Penn State, that it would be Dylan Lee. I don't know if that's accurate. That seems strange to me. No disrespect to Dylan Lee, but he is far more unproven than Hansen and Sama. So I'm not exactly sure what that is or what level of truth there is to that. But if Campbell decided to take Dylan Lee, and we get to keep Hansen, Sama, and River Peppers, I'm good with that. A shaky run focused offense and a theoretically good defense. I think Kyle would have all kinds of field goals. Yeah, I mean, he'd be able to kick all day and night over here. So we'll see. Yeah. Oh yeah. I just saw it. Yeah. Wait, strong power run, stout defense. We're Iowa. Yep. That's exactly right. Unfortunately, we're going to end up continuing our slow transition to Ferentz ball here, which is what it is. Unfortunately, I think our offensive scheme will be much more dynamic than what Iowa's had for the most part. Yeah, Wazoo had a good kicker, so I guess if Kyle Conradi leaves, you can try to get Wazoo's kicker. Either way, I think Jimmy Rogers is a good hire. Tyler Roll, I think, is a home run for the offensive staff. I don't know if they announced a defensive coordinator. I think I saw. Yeah, yes, they did, because it's the guy from Toledo. I'm trying to remember his name now. I guess I shouldn't say it has been officially announced. I was going to see if I could find. Anything about it. I know. Football Scoop had something about the defense. Yeah, most of the coaching staff has been kind of it's mostly just the GAs and all that's left over. All that's on the page right now is Jimmy Rogers, John Haycock, Jake Landry, Colby Cratch, Hake Poteet, Eli Rashid, Jake Waters is all your position coaches left. I have not heard anything about Jake Waters. I've heard rumblings that Eli Rashid may just choose to retire. I've heard that John Haycock is still on the fence about retiring. He may not go to Penn State with Matt Campbell, especially because Campbell would theoretically have access to Jim Knowles there. So speaking of Eli Rashid, speaking of all that, I want to see if I can find that. The Toledo assistant that we grabbed. I want to make sure I got him. Ross Watson. Ross Watson. I'll pull him. Let me share this story here. Oh wait, duh. I have this way. Okay, so per Football Scoop, which generally, if you guys are not familiar with Football Scoop, they generally know their shit. They're pretty good. If they publish something, you can rely on it. So I know Bobbitt was involved there. I think so. Yeah. So Bobbitt is the defensive coordinator. That's true. The Toledo guy here though is Watson. He's not gonna be the defensive coordinator, but he is going to be one of the main defensive assistants. I believe he might have coached the secondary. I think he coached the secondary or he was a co-defensive coordinator for the past 10 seasons at Toledo, where they were really, really good. He had a few places he could go to Syracuse and all that. So he's in his 10th season as defensive coach of the Rockets, 6 as the co-defensive coordinator. He grooms safeties that have played an indispensable role in the team's success. So he currently coaches the same stuff as Deion Broomfield does. I don't know. Oh, Watson already has the helmet harness winner. There you go. There goes Ross Watson. I don't know what that means for Deion Broomfield. I don't know. Maybe Deion Broomfield's going to head to Penn State. I don't know what the situation is there. It'd be kind of cool if he could hang around because being an Iowa State guy. but he could just choose to follow Matt Campbell. What's worth noting though is that Toledo's defense, especially their secondary, has been very, very, very good under Ross Watson. If you have to lose DM Broomfield, that's a good guy to replace him with. Very good guy. So between Bobbitt and Ross Watson, I think the defense is in good hands. We'll see what they do with the rest, with like the linebackers coach and the defensive line. If if Eli Rashid retires or if he decides to hang around for a couple years with, if he hangs around for a couple years with Jimmy Rogers, I don't know. I will say though, if John Hancock, if Eli Rashid is what allows you to keep is Elijah Reeder, is that the right name? Is that, I'm trying to remember if that's the right name, but we talked about him last week. The defensive end from New Jersey that looks like a Will McDonald clone. If Eli Rashid is what allows you to keep that kid, I'm keeping Eli Rashid and letting him coach a 4-down front instead of a 3-down front. It's we'll see what happens there. So Ty says not sure where I saw, but I saw Broomfield is gone for Penn State. Okay, yeah, he certainly could be. I think this is all. I think they're still all getting something figured out. Literally. So today was also published that Nittany Lions have added Reed Kagi from Iowa State to their coaching staff. So Reed Kagi, the strength coach, is off to Penn State. So we're about to find out. We're about to find out if that spat of injuries was Reed Kagi's fault or if it was dumb fucking luck. It was dumb, if it was just shit luck. So, so Iowa State strength staff is now headed over to Penn State as well. That was Matthias just retweeted it on Twitter. I think is it Elijah Reeder? That sounds right. I want to make sure I've got that right. Yeah, Elijah Reeder. Yep. For what's worth noting, he still follows the wide right main account. So whatever that means. But yeah, I would assume a lot of, because it sounded to me like it sounded to me as though a lot of Jimmy Rogers' staff was going to follow him from Wazoo, with the exception of the offensive staff, obviously with Tyler Rowland now being brought over as offensive coordinator, but I don't know if he's going to bring like his position coaches. I think I've seen some names. I've seen some names, like was it Northern Illinois' offensive line coach? Because I believe I just saw Northern Illinois offensive tackle go in the portal. So I've heard that name. We'll see about that. Because Washington State's offense last year was not very good. It was okay, but it was very, very conservative. And I think that was just part of what they had to do with their personnel and stuff like that. And of course, I felt bad because there's lots of Washington State fans on Twitter this past weekend, like saying like, "Oh, he'll be gone in a year," blah, 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 and they were, understandably very bitter towards Jimmy Rogers, which I totally get. If Matt Campbell had left after one season, I would also, feel a little bit slighted. But I hope Washington State fans can understand, like, while that is a rightfully proud football program, I hope they understand that like Iowa State is just now it's on a completely different level than Washington State, which is kind of funny to say, but like Jimmy Pollard had said that Washington State's NIL last year was $2.5 million. Iowa State's is like 14 million. So he's on about a 5x multiplier there for NIL funds available to him. So I apologize, Washington State, but Jimmy Rogers is moving back closer to home, back to where his family lives. He's getting he's getting 5 times the NIL funds. I'm sorry, but it's just not the same job. I would say it's a Power 4 school. Washington State is now fully a G5 school. Even if the Pac-12 wants to say they're not, that conference is 90% teams that have always been G5. So it is a G5 conference. So it's just kind of like, I'm bullish on On Jimmy Rogers, I like how he handled his press conference. I think I saw a comment earlier. He like it did have a lot of the same vibe as to what we saw from Matt Campbell. But Jimmy Rogers definitely more intense dude. Uh, but what I did appreciate though, I think I tweeted something about this, and I think I put something in the article about this on Wide Right with kind of my overall thoughts. But I one thing I appreciated was how honest and direct and transparent that Jimmy Rogers was with his answers. God bless Matt Campbell, but Christ, that guy didn't answer a single question for an entire decade. It was a lot of coach. It was just basically coach speak mad libs every single time. He was asked even a remotely difficult question. But Jimmy Rogers went up there, answered difficult questions, gave very honest and open answers, and say, "Hey, like I get it. Matt Campbell was awesome. I'm not here to replace him or to make you angry at him. We're just here to build on what he had and continue to build this program up." And I appreciated that about him. And overall, I think he's 1-0. He won the introductory press conference, which I guess you can say is a thing that matters. But now right now he's in the middle of doing doing the hard part of his job. It's actually funny though, because at the end of his press conference yesterday, he was asking, he's like, can we be done? I have to go. I have players to go talk to. Cause he was basically trying to get out of there so he can start his player meetings and start meeting with people. Which I respected the hell out of. He's like, I got a job to do. I'm not trying to be trying to do any of this stuff. So, I always respect a coach. I respect coaches that want absolutely no part of being in front of the media, that they just want to get out of there and go back to doing their jobs. I respect the hell out of that. But right now he's in the process of meeting with with current players, with talking with recruits, things like that. Um, I we'll see what happens. The only one we've seen go in the transfer portal, I believe, like fully in the portal, is Quentin Taylor. Now we did see Zay Robinson say he was like going in the portal, but he was looking forward to meeting Jimmy Rogers and the rest of the staff. So like he's not like out. He's just saying, I'm willing to take phone calls while I also get to know this staff. So he could come back. I don't know if he will, but he could absolutely. But Zay Robinson absolutely could come back. There's a couple other recruits. Unfortunately, 2027 4-star tackle Will Slagle, the one that committed in the tailgating lots of Jack Trice, did open up his recruitment again, but in his post did say he's looking forward to meeting the new staff and potentially, and has not closed the door on Iowa State. So a couple there. We did see one 2026 commit, Bryson Williams, or 2026 signee Bryson Williams, get out of his commitment and is just fully going someplace else now. He just decided he didn't want to play for Jimmy, which it is what it is. And honestly, the Bryson Williams thing could be a function of a scheme change, because part of this, part of the very the honesty of Jimmy Rogers in this was, someone asked him about some X's and O's. I think it might have been Chris Williams that asked him about this, Robert. And he said that they were looking at going to a 4-down front. And that currently the defensive roster is built for a 3-3 stack. But he's going to have to go through and evaluate the roster and see who's staying, who's not, so that way they can retool things to fit their scheme. And maybe, it's 100% possible that Jimmy, talked to Bryson and they came to the conclusion that there wasn't a great fit for Bryson based on the scheme, whatever it is. And Broom is who he committed to play for. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, we're just in the age of college football now where these things are going to happen. We really liked Iowa State's recruiting class. Could have been better, and maybe they could have been better. Part is one of the reasons that Matt Campbell went to Penn State, which I can't blame him. I don't know if anybody watched Matt Campbell's introductory press conference. He was crying half the time. Because I guess even though he grew up in Ohio, I kind of think he grew up a Penn State fan based on what he was talking about. So whatever. I don't know. I tuned in because I was just curious. I didn't watch it live. I watched it afterwards just so I was curious more than anything. But anyways, we will see what happens with the recruiting class. We'll see what happens. Hopefully Jimmy's able to keep a lot of these guys. Um, if not, I'm sure they'll get it figured out in the transfer portal. It is what it is. Unfortunately, 2026 was, as of last Tuesday when we last talked, 2026 was looking like a potential Big 12 title run type season, maybe push for a playoff spot. Now we're going to have to probably reset expectations. We'll see what kind of, we'll see who Jimmy can keep around. What players he can retain, what players he can, hopefully keep from going to Penn State. We'll see, but probably not going to be like the expectations for next year will probably come down from, we should be competing for a Big 12 title to like, let's be competitive. Let's make a bowl game, that kind of stuff. But we'll see. We'll just see what can stick. If you can keep Rocco, if you keep Rocco, Hansen, and Sama, we're still thinking 8 wins or something like that next season. We'll see. Jimmy, he says Jimmy likes to use a long athletic edge rusher who can drop to linebacker, which is something I'm very intrigued about. That one, that has Elijah Reeder written all over it. But 2, that's got Caleb Bacon written all over it. And he also said that he recruited Cooper Ebel, which would be awesome. If you can keep Bacon, Ebel, and Brazina, the middle of your defense is in good shape. If you can keep, even if you lose Jontez and Coop to Penn State, which wouldn't be great, but like if you can keep David Coffey and Trey Bell and bring in a couple other guys, and keep developing Bennett Goye, whoever, whatever's going on there. You can, he recruited Bo Goodwin. Bo Goodwin was committed to South Dakota State originally and then flipped to Iowa State. And Wazoo's got a stud linebacker that played at South Dakota State, then transferred with Jimmy to Washington State, and is now in the portal again, presumably to come to Iowa State. Really, really nice player. I'm telling you, like, you might lose a couple star players. Like, you might lose Ben Bramer. You might lose Gabe Burkle. Or, I'm literally just throwing names out here. I'm not suggesting I know anything. You might lose Jontez. You might lose Jeremiah Cooper. You might lose Rocco. But there is still a lot of talent on this roster that might not transfer. And there's other guys that they're going to be able to bring in to make sure that this program remains competitive. Are they a 10-win football team next year? I don't know. They're going to have to put a lot of guys. They're going to have to do retools. They're going to have to find some guys in the portal, and they'll be able to do that. They'll have some money to be able to go, by losing, depending on who you lose, if you lose Rocco or Jontez or Coop, you now have NIL money that you can use to go find guys in the portal. If you, by losing star players, you also get their NIL money and their rev share money. So you can go use that to find other players. They can find other guys. The 425, what I'm going to do at some point, either on this channel or on some other platform, we're going to go through it. I want to do a big X's and O's on exactly on a 425, how it works. And really get kind of low down on this, go through Washington State tape, go through South Dakota State tape, and see how they like to play their version of a 425. I'm going to do that at some point. I don't know if it'll be like right now or if it's let's wait till the staff is fully formed and wait till we get a better idea of what the roster is going to look like. It might just do it in January after the portal opens and we get a better idea of what the personnel situation is going to look like. So the 3-3-5 is still a very good defense when you're talking about playing against air raid teams. There are NFL defenses that are using it to deal with like the Bills and the Chiefs and all that. But the Big 12 is not an air raid conference anymore. It's very much a power spread type conference now. It's a power running game with like pretty creative concepts using tight ends and things like that. Like the rest of the Big 12 has the Big 12 basically morphed to have a bunch of clones of Iowa State, just to varying degrees of success. And and with slight variations and stuff like that. Now, granted, like Utah is a much more like quarterback heavy run team and stuff like that. But basically, what happened was they saw that Iowa State's formula to win in the Big 12 with lesser talent, both defensively and offensively, and basically everybody morphed to mimic that. So now the Big 12 is just a bunch of different, slightly different versions of Matt Campbell's Iowa State teams. And the 3-3-5 just isn't as good against that type of scheme. It's just not as stout against power running teams with mobile quarterbacks, things like that. 4-2-5 can hopefully get you to the quarterback a little bit faster, more reliably, and be more, just be generally more stout against the run, things like that, and be a little bit more versatile that way. So at some point, we're going to dig into the X's and O's of that as well. But yeah, overall though, I'm very happy. I'm as happy as I could be with the hire, with how things are going so far. I'm very curious to see how they approach this portal. Like we said, the stud Washington State linebacker. I'm gonna just pull him up. Let me see if I can pull his name up. Anthony Polano. Oh, yeah, I'm going to say if I can find some just real quick highlights of him. So anyways, here's, Anthony Polano, redshirt freshman linebacker, recorded 63 started 7 games, recorded 63 tackles after transferring from South Dakota State. Clearly following Jimmy Rogers around. Presumably will be headed to Iowa State. No, we're getting into some weird stuff there. So we're just going to keep moving. Keep moving. So anyways, do we think we'll keep some receivers? That's a great question. For what it's worth, Chase Soule's dad on Twitter, one, is a good follow. But two, has made like the way he's been, like his messaging on Twitter has been is that like they're giving him a chance. Like it's not like Matt Campbell's out the door and then all of a sudden Chase Soule's gone, like right after him type of thing. It sounds to me like they're giving him a chance. Zay Robinson is the only one that we've seen in the portal, or like, declare some sort of intent to at least field some offers. We will see what happens with that. I don't know. You'd like to, I think if you can keep Eskilson, Soule, and getting Zay Robinson back would be really nice. But if you can keep Jeffrey Roberts in the class, I think you can get, I think you'll be okay. You can, especially in wide receivers aren't that hard to find in the portal. Is KG going to Penn State going to mean when they get ravaged by injuries? We're going to find out. That is exactly what we're going to find out. Yeah, Chase's dad telling people to calm down on Friday I really appreciated that, because like it's not like the Souls are like an Iowa State legacy family or anything like that, but Chase's dad is like very much in the same vein as like Mark Tampa, TJ Tampa's dad. There's a couple other ones I had on top of my head, but Mark Tampa's the first one I thought of, just like players' dads that are very much like involved. And Rory Walling's dad, he's on Twitter all the time. Like it just kind of like turned over to calm down and just like kind of rallying around this. So I appreciated that as well. Redbird says there's an all-conference safety from South Dakota State also in the portal. Reasonably can suggest that would be a target as well. So we'll see. I think that he'll be able to put together a decent transfer class. I've heard he is a good recruiter. We'll see. At minimum, because of South Dakota State, that he's got a good eye for the talent around the upper Midwest and finding kind of the diamonds in the rough. It's just what you have to do at South Dakota State. You get the Southwest Minnesota, Northwest Iowa talent, where it's just like a bunch of kids playing really small school football, playing 8-man, stuff like that, and having a good eye for that. And hopefully he can keep together, most or all of this 2026 class, which has some really nice players in it. So We'll see. Overall, though, I'm encouraged. I am optimistic. I'm looking forward to seeing how he continues to build out this coaching staff and the roster. So, uh, if anyone's got any questions, throw them in there real quick. Otherwise, I think we'll probably wrap it up for this week. I do think in the next couple weeks here, though, over the next couple weeks, as we kind of get this, I want to get into some more like it's hard to do like report cards on the season just because like now like I want to do some report cards on the season, but I'm gonna have to retool how I do them and look at them through the lens of just kind of what's happening now because usually it's kind of a you got a C minus on the season, but going into next season, this is what you can fix. But there's a lot of guys that it's like, you know, they're not coming back. So, do I think the O line will continue on its trajectory without Clanton, assuming he leaves? I believe it's been confirmed already that Ryan Clanton is headed to Penn State. As far as do I think the offensive line will continue the trajectory? I wish I knew an answer to that. You know, if they keep the guys in the room, like if you keep Brendan Black and Trevor Bohr and Vayeka Kula, if you can keep those guys in the room, especially those three, if you can keep those three in the room, I will be optimistic about the offensive line for next year. You can find tackles, though. I know the one from Northern Illinois is in the portal right now. We'll see what he can do. If he decides to come here, I should say. But if the interior offensive line can be Bohr, Black, and Ikakula, I'll be optimistic for the offensive line next year. So we'll see. I really think they've got good guys in the room. If they can keep most of them there, if they can keep most or all of them out of the transfer portal, I think we'll be in good shape. And Freddie, yeah, and I'm being optimistic about the offensive line. It's unfortunate because the offensive line was legit good this year. It was very good, and now the coach is gone. So we'll see. You know, Ryan Clanton isn't the only good offensive line coach in the country. And they've got guys in the room that are good and that were coached by Ryan Clanton and all this. So like we'll see. We'll see what happens here. But let's go ahead. We'll end it for this week. We'll be back again next week. Who knows? I'm guessing we'll probably have the same coach next Tuesday, but we're on weeks, consecutive weeks since we, last had a new head coach. We're back to flipping the calendar back to one. So instead of 520 or whatever it was. If Rocco leaves Raiola, no, we are not getting Dylan Raiola. I do not want Dylan Raiola. If Rocco leaves, you keep Alex Mansky. You play Alex Mansky. That's all you need. So we're gonna wrap her up for this week. We'll be back again next Tuesday. See what kind of movement we get in there. Tomorrow night, women's basketball plays Iowa. That should be a very close game. Should be a good game. Audi Crooks has been, in my opinion, she's been the best player in women's college basketball so far this season. And we'll see what she can continue to do against Iowa, who has had a very good run in that series as of late. And then the men play on Thursday, which should also be an entertaining game. Iowa's better this season. They've got Bennett Sturts, who's a good player. But Iowa State right now is in the conversation to be the best team in men's college basketball, period. They have been amazing. They have 3 players on the roster right now that could be first team All-Americans, Lipsy, Jefferson, and Milan. Milan has been unbelievable. Jefferson had a rough game against Purdue, but otherwise not too bad. Killian Toure is the fucking truth. Killian Toure is going to have Bennett Sturts in hell. And there's nothing else on that Iowa roster that scares you outside of Bennett Sturts. So, either way, so everybody tune in tomorrow night and Thursday night. I don't know for sure if we're going to do a nightcap tomorrow night with the women's game, but we'll figure something out. It might be before or after, or we might move it to Thursday or something. But we will do that. Keep your eye out over the next few weeks and month for some other big movement and stuff like that too. So Everybody, we'll see you again next Tuesday. Thanks for watching. I State Cyclones live here on the Voice of College Football. See you guys again next time. Thanks.